The story rewinds to a few hours earlier, under the quiet night sky. A young man is meticulously scrubbing the bathroom, focusing on the drain and tiles. This is Yamamoto, a university student who finds an odd satisfaction in making things clean. He feels cleaning is a fair trade of effort for results, unlike the unpredictability of people. After losing track of time, he rushes off to his late-night shift at a convenience store. But the quiet hours at work quickly drain his energy, leaving him utterly bored. He wonders how the store even stays in business with so few customers on his shift. Just then, the silence is broken as a lone customer walks through the automatic doors. The customer calls out his name, and Yamamoto looks up, his expression shifting to surprise. He instantly recognizes the familiar voice of someone he hasn't seen in a long time. He stares in utter disbelief, unable to process who just walked in. Standing before him is a girl from his past, her expression unreadable. She quietly acknowledges his shock, her gaze steady and direct. Yamamoto finally utters her name, Hayashi, breaking the stunned silence. He reels from the coincidence, realizing she somehow lives in the same city. Hayashi confirms she lives in a nearby apartment and casually asks about him. He's thrown off by her friendly small talk, a stark contrast to how he remembers her. As he rings up her purchase, he marvels at how much she's changed since high school. His mind drifts back to their classroom, recalling the person she used to be. He remembers her as a carefree classmate who once dropped her lip balm near his desk. He corrects his memory. It wasn't lip balm, but her eraser she'd dropped in class. Back then, he debated whether to pick it up or just ignore her completely. He grudgingly bent down, figuring it was better than hearing her whine about it. But his simple act of kindness was met with a shockingly hostile glare. All he did was place the eraser back on her desk, trying to be helpful. In return, she shot him a look of pure disgust, clicking her tongue in annoyance. Yamamoto was left completely baffled, wondering what her problem could possibly be. He recalls how she was the school's popular queen, constantly surrounded by friends and admirers. He never understood the appeal, watching guy after guy line up to confess to her. Her typical response was pure arrogance, once letting out a massive yawn in a suitor's face. He remembers she earned the title, the Arrogant Queen, for her habit of dismissing anyone she deemed beneath her. Snapping back to the present, he decides to keep his distance, having zero fond memories of her. But as he bags her items, he spots a dark, unsettling bruise peeking out from her sleeve. His resolve to stay uninvolved shatters as he instinctively asks about the injury on her arm. He realizes her long-sleeved sweatshirt in the summer heat isn't a fashion choice, but a desperate cover-up. A sense of dread washes over him as he imagines what other injuries she might be hiding. Hayashi quietly admits that the mark was inflicted by her boyfriend. Yamamoto's world freezes, utterly stunned by her blunt and horrifying confession. She then reveals they live together, and her boyfriend is waiting for her at home right now. Hayashi glares, chiding him for prying and showing a flicker of her old, abrasive personality. He watches her leave, assuming he angered her, but then remembers she's always disliked him. Yamamoto is left wondering why she would confess something so serious to someone she supposedly hates. He realizes the arrogant queen just showed a moment of weakness, and he fears for her safety. Acting on pure instinct, he shouts her name, desperately trying to stop her from walking out the door. He boldly offers her a safe place to stay for the night at his own apartment. Hayashi spins around with a hostile expression, telling him his intense stare is frightening her. He frantically tries to reassure her, suggesting other options and even offering his spare key for her peace of mind. She reveals her parents disowned her for moving in with her boyfriend, which forced her to drop out of college. Undeterred, Yamamoto insists she stay away from home and prepares to give her his address and key. Hayashi unexpectedly declines the key, stating she will simply wait for him, leaving them both stunned. Hayashi quietly agrees, deciding to wait for him until his shift is over. He contrasts the subdued girl before him with the memory of her as the popular, untouchable queen of their high school. As she waits, he can't reconcile this quiet person with the arrogant girl he used to know. An hour later, they arrive at his simple, unassuming apartment complex under the night sky. He shows her into his meticulously clean but nearly empty apartment, offering her a drink. As he prepares the tea, the reality of the situation hits him, feeling completely surreal. He tries to calm his nerves, reminding himself he has no ulterior motives, but the tension is palpable. His hand trembles slightly as he finishes pouring the drinks, trying to compose himself. Hayashi smirks, remarking on the irony of being indebted to him of all people. She suggests the timing was perfect for them both, but he privately believes he just did the decent thing. He cautiously probes, asking if her boyfriend was simply having a bad day. Hayashi defends him, blaming his work stress and insisting she needs to be more supportive. Yamamoto starts to second-guess himself, wondering if he made a mistake by interfering. She suddenly brightens up, thanking him and pointing out that he's also changed since high school. Hayashi then casually asks to borrow his shower, catching him completely off guard. The bizarre reality of having his former high school nemesis in his bathroom finally sinks in. She emerges wearing his oversized shirt, complimenting his clean bathroom and leaving him flustered. But his composure shatters when he spots even more bruises covering her legs. Dropping her defensive act, she quietly admits that her boyfriend is hopelessly abusive. He observes that the bruises look old, realizing this has been going on for a long time. He firmly tells her she shouldn't be with someone like that, but her expression screams defiance. She angrily challenges his judgment, but he calmly insists it's her choice to listen or not. He admits his concern is also selfish, worried he'll be blamed if something happens to her. Yamamoto clarifies that he's interfering partly to protect his own conscience from future guilt. He directly questions her loyalty to a man who uses her as a punching bag for his stress. He reflects on his past dislike for her, now seeing her supposed selflessness as a form of being used. A wave of anger hits him as he says he won't stop her, even if returning to her boyfriend ruins her. He immediately regrets his harsh outburst, realizing he spoke on pure impulse and expects her to be furious. He resigns himself to the fact that he can't do more if she won't help herself, as she quietly agrees her situation is terrible. He offers her his bed for the night, deciding to sleep on the floor, and she quietly accepts. He advises her to take her time to think, assuring her there's no rush. She teases him for his monk-like demeanor, joking that it's why he's still single. Later, as he sleeps soundly on the floor, she lies awake in bed watching him. A quiet night passes with him on the floor and her in the bed, a clear boundary between them. Despite the surprisingly comfortable arrangement, Hayashi finds herself wide awake, her mind racing. She cautiously peeks over the mattress, her eyes settling on his sleeping form. Breaking the silence, she quietly calls out to him in the dimly lit room. She then makes a shocking and ambiguous proposition that hangs heavily in the air. Yamamoto is instantly jolted from his sleep, completely stunned by her words. His mind races as he panics, wildly misinterpreting her offer and questioning his decision to help her. He's completely flustered as she suddenly embraces him, wondering if this is just another one of her games. She slips out of bed to lie beside him, amused that he was only pretending to be asleep. He protests her forwardness, but she playfully retorts, asking if she needs his permission now. He almost brings up her boyfriend but catches himself, a topic that immediately silences her. She bluntly asks about his romantic history, and when he denies his inexperience, she immediately sees through his lie. Finding his denial endearing, she calls his bluff and admits his reaction was surprisingly cute. Utterly embarrassed, he clenches his fist and tells her to stop, turning away to hide his face. The mood shifts as she begins to open up, explaining her boyfriend used to be kind before they lived together. She reveals the verbal abuse, recalling how he would mock her for not working, making her feel worthless. A heavy silence falls between them as they lie together, the full weight of her story now out in the open. She ends her somber story with a wry smile, telling him to just go to sleep. He surprises her by genuinely acknowledging the immense hardship she's endured. She playfully demands he repeat his kind words, but he gets flustered and refuses. Amused by his shyness, she affectionately calls him hopeless for being so easily embarrassed. Leaning close, she quietly admits it's been a long time since anyone has been so gentle with her. And with that simple, honest exchange, their strange new life together truly begins. Sometime later, Yamamoto groggily wakes up on the floor, his head throbbing. He sits up confused, wondering why he's on the floor until a sudden sight jolts him. He discovers Hayashi has abandoned the bed to sleep on the floor right next to him. An overhead view shows them sleeping side by side, a new unspoken arrangement between them. He watches her sleep, remembering exactly why she chose the floor over the comfortable bed. She wakes up and observes that he's seriously changed since they were in high school. The morning begins with the sizzle of him cooking breakfast in a pan. She finally stirs, groggily asking if his body hurts from the uncomfortable night. Complaining of her own soreness, she gets a gentle reminder that he told her to use the bed. She curiously approaches him in the kitchen, identifying the meal as yakisoba. Impressed that he can cook, she watches as he confidently finishes preparing their food. He serves 2 plates of yakisoba, setting the scene for their first meal together. She wastes no time digging in, taking a huge bite of the noodles he prepared. A look of pure delight crosses her face as she declares his cooking is incredible. She finishes her meal with a grateful prayer, but he immediately calls out her poor table manners. When she offers to wash the dishes, he dismisses his cooking as just following instructions, much to her annoyance. She insists on helping as repayment, but he rejects the idea, cluelessly offering her a rubber band for her hair. After she scolds him for the terrible suggestion, he offers a plastic string from a box, which she reluctantly accepts. She skillfully ties her hair back, preparing to wash the dishes in his kitchen. As she stands at the sink, he watches her, a pensive look crossing his face. Lounging with his phone, he silently wishes she could find a moment of peace in his home. He brings up the serious topic of her future, and she admits she's terrified of making a choice she'll regret. He advises her to think objectively to avoid regret, but she questions his certainty. She argues that emotions always get in the way, her hand clenching as a mark on her leg hints at her turmoil. He confidently refutes her claim, insisting that thinking objectively is not impossible. She skeptically questions his certainty, but he calmly assures her that everything will be fine. With a sudden burst of confidence and a thumbs up, he declares that he's there to support her. He immediately gets flustered by his own bold statement, while she remains silently taken aback. He clarifies his offer, urging her to confide in him if she's afraid, which she finds surprisingly dependable. He tries to downplay his kindness by calling it selfish, but she sees right through his flimsy excuse. A warm, genuine smile spreads across her face as she calls him out for being so indirect with his concern. He asks her to tell him about her relationship, and she begins to recount everything that happened since moving to the city. His narration reveals that despite her attempts to lighten the mood, her story was a grim tale of hardship. A close-up on her face reveals a forced, painful smile, masking the trauma of her past. He's disturbed by the pained smile on her face as she recounts her trauma. She explains her boyfriend's apologies as he reveals he's researched the cyclical nature of her situation. He maps out the pattern of abuse, tension, explosion, and remorse, which she recognizes with a start. She confesses he's the only one she's ever told, while he admits to looking up her predicament online. He questions the absence of her phone, and she reveals her boyfriend isolated her by claiming she didn't need one. He sits across from her, trying to grasp the full extent of her isolation, and asks if her phone was destroyed. She confirms she was cut off from everyone, and he realizes his initial selfish desire to just ease his conscience is no longer enough. A look of fierce resolve crosses his face. He's now determined to get her out of that relationship, regardless of the cost. She continues to defend her abuser, highlighting his supposed sweet side to rationalize his behavior. He listens intently, understanding her conflicted state as he begins plotting how to persuade her to leave for good. With newfound clarity from their conversation, she announces her decision to finally break up with him. She acknowledges that he was only using her to satisfy his own possessiveness, a truth she now accepts. He warns her that her boyfriend won't let go easily and reveals he has a plan to handle it. The possibility of her ex retaliating sends a visible shock of terror through her. He confidently proposes a plan with a clear goal, to make her ex-boyfriend want to stay away permanently. She immediately jumps to the wrong conclusion, worrying his plan involves physical violence. He calmly lays out the first steps of his strategy, which involve visiting a hospital and then the police. The suggestion of involving the police leaves her completely stunned and speechless. He explains that pressing charges will put her ex on the police's radar, legally keeping him away. She expresses hesitation about taking such an extreme step, questioning if it's really necessary. He lays out the cold, hard facts of her abuse, reminding her of the isolation and harm she's endured. He presses her again, questioning why she's still reluctant to involve the police after everything she's suffered. She remains silent, her clenched fist and the marks on her leg revealing the depth of her conflict. She finally argues that leaving him is one thing, but pressing charges feels like a completely different battle. He unexpectedly relents, his sharp gaze suggesting he's already thinking of a new plan. He acknowledges her feelings are what matter most, before pivoting to make a small request. He advises her to take his suggestions less seriously, trying to ease the immense pressure on her. He explains his bluntness is just for efficiency, urging her to be direct about her own boundaries. He confirms they'll avoid the police for now, then casually proposes she stay with him for a while. Stunned by his offer, she defensively questions his true intentions for wanting her to stay. She angrily confronts him, demanding to know what he's really after with his pathetic offer. He lays out the practical reason. Her ex is undoubtedly searching for her, making it unsafe to return. For her own safety, he advises her to stay hidden in his apartment, and she reluctantly agrees. He presents one final, non-negotiable task, leaving her anxious as he hopes she'll understand his true goal. She completely misunderstands, assuming his request is physical and reluctantly agreeing, much to his internal frustration. He realizes with a jolt that she's completely misconstrued his intentions yet again. Her suspicion solidifies into a direct accusation, believing he wants to use her as repayment. He immediately shuts down her absurd assumption, but she angrily points out his contradictory behavior. He finally has a breakthrough, realizing her anger stems from a deep-seated hatred of being treated like an object. He firmly corrects her, stating that wasn't his intention and instructing her never to agree to something she doesn't want. He clarifies his non-negotiable task, a trip to the hospital, which she finally understands. She agrees to go, but he's puzzled by her hint of disappointment. The medical report confirms the severity of her injuries, leaving him baffled by her complex reactions. After leaving the hospital, they walk in silence, the weight of the situation hanging between them. He remembers her deflecting the doctor's questions, realizing she's still too afraid to expose her ex. He resolves not to force the issue of pressing charges, respecting her current state of mind. Noticing her discomfort in her current clothes, he decides their next stop is a shopping trip for a fresh start. She immediately worries about the cost, insisting she'll repay him even if it takes a long time. He reassures her with a gentle smile, telling her there's no rush to pay him back. The shopping trip takes an awkward turn for him when she cheerfully shops for undergarments. The next morning, she sleeps soundly in his bed, the bruises on her body still a stark reminder of her ordeal. He wakes up with a sore back from the floor, making a mental note to finally buy a proper futon. With time to spare before class, he considers indulging in his favorite hobby, morning cleaning. He decides against it, opting to quietly make breakfast so she can continue to rest undisturbed. He leaves a prepared meal for her, hoping she gets all the sleep she needs to recover. As a man who loves cleaning, skipping his morning routine feels strangely unsettling as he heads out. Returning later with a new futon, he's greeted by the unexpected and pleasant smell of food. He finds her in the kitchen preparing dinner, her hair neatly tied back, and is glad he bought her the accessory. He tells her she didn't need to go to the trouble, but she simply asks what he thinks of hamburger steak. She confidently states that since he's letting her stay, cooking for him is the very least she can do. She cuts him off, demanding to know if he likes hamburger steak, revealing she's had plenty of practice. He gives a lukewarm response and she teases him for his half-hearted answer. He tries to set up a serious talk for after dinner but stops himself mid-thought. He suddenly realizes he never bought the ingredients for her meal as they sit down to eat. After taking a bite, he confirms to awaiting her that the food is genuinely good. A small, satisfied smile appears on her face as she enjoys her own cooking. She insists on doing the dishes, explaining she wants to handle the chores to feel useful. He watches her head to the kitchen, a thoughtful expression on his face. He casually asks if she went out at all while he was gone. He instantly cringes at his own words, realizing he sounds just like her ex, as she turns to challenge him. He tries to backtrack, saying it's her choice whether to listen to his advice. He can't help but point out how reckless it was to risk running into her ex. She furiously tells him he doesn't understand before turning her back on him. A moment later, she approaches him, breaking the tense silence. She apologizes for being stubborn, explaining she should have asked before going shopping. He immediately tells her she has no reason to apologize for something like that. She confesses she was terrified he'd be angry, recalling how her ex would use any excuse to hurt her. She reveals the only peaceful moments she ever had were when her ex was eating, as it was the only time he was quiet. She admits she cooked for him, hoping he'd be too busy eating to get mad at her for going out. He asks what was so important she'd take such a risk, and she firmly states she wants to get a part-time job. He questions the urgency of her decision, finding her timing completely baffling. She confesses her fear of being a financial burden on him if she doesn't start earning her own money. Her anxiety deepens as she explains her worry about draining his savings with no way to repay him soon. He understands her feelings but warns that if her ex finds her, the consequences will be irreversible. With unsettling resolve, she accepts the risk, declaring that if she's found, then that's just how it has to be. He's completely stunned by her fatalistic logic, unable to grasp why she'd invite such danger. Her reasoning seems utterly alien to him, a queen's logic that defies all common sense. He struggles to understand her mindset, pondering why she's so resigned to her fate. From his perspective, the solution is simple: just stay hidden in the apartment until the danger passes. He can't help but wonder if she's deliberately endangering herself just to avoid feeling indebted to him. He furiously reflects on how her ex systematically broke her strong will in just a few short months. To counter her financial anxiety, he decisively pulls out his phone to show her something. The screen reveals his bank account, displaying a surprisingly large amount of savings. He calmly explains his frugal habits and how he's been saving since high school, with his parents covering rent. His logic is clear. Since he's financially stable, she doesn't need to risk her safety for a job. She vehemently rejects his offer, accusing him of lying about being willing to spend his money on her. Her self-worth plummets as she insists she's nothing but a burden he has no reason to keep. He watches her break down, finally suspecting the true reason she was so desperate to work. He realizes she's trying to reclaim her stolen dignity and declares he has his own reasons for wanting her to stay. Turning to face her, he firmly insists he is not lying about wanting her there. He explains that while he doesn't mind housework, his busy schedule makes it hard to keep up. She questions if that's his only reason, but he declares with unsettling intensity that he is a man of precision. He reveals his obsessive cleaning habits, where a single speck of dust triggers a full room scrub down. He passionately argues that his perfectionism and lack of time create a major problem she can't solve just by cleaning. He declares that cleaning is his life's purpose, and her handling other chores would let him pursue his hobby, a reason she finds completely absurd. He abruptly changes the subject to praise her cooking, leaving her slightly bewildered by his strange logic. She finally relents, agreeing to stay, as he reassures her that being a little trouble is part of living together. She then surprises him by offering to make him a bento for his classes. Her practical reasoning is to save money, a sensible plan he immediately agrees with. She shyly follows up, asking what kind of food he likes so she can prepare his meals. He's taken aback by her question, feeling a strange new sensation stir within him. On the morning of her third day, he wakes up surprisingly pain-free, grateful for the futon. It's only 4:30 a.m., but his cleaning obsession kicks in, though he hesitates to wake her. He decides the bathroom is the perfect quiet place to unleash his cleaning fury. An hour later, she stumbles upon him on the floor, remarking on his early start to the day. While she brushes her teeth, he's busy scrubbing the floor grout with a toothbrush. She asks if he's always an early riser, and he casually confirms it's his normal habit. When she repeats her comment moments later, he figures she's still mostly asleep. She remembers he was always early in high school, too, playfully calling him a weirdo for it. He turns on the morning news and tells her he's starting breakfast, directing her to wait. She asks what he's doing, but he simply states he's carrying the food. He insists on carrying his own plate, but she argues that as a guest, he should let her handle it. Her patience snaps, and she angrily orders him to sit down, leaving him completely bewildered by her sudden mood shift. He realizes his politeness backfired and decides to change, concluding she must be used to seeing men undressed. Inside the bathroom, he quickly changes, tossing his clothes into the washing machine. Just as she announces lunch is ready, she flings open the door, causing him to let out a startled scream. She questions his dramatic reaction, and he defensively explains it was because she barged in without warning. A mischievous smirk spreads across her face as she pieces something together. Leaning in close, she playfully deduces that he's uncomfortable with her seeing him unclothed. She then boldly declares she would have no problem letting him see her in the same state. Completely flustered, he watches as she hands him lunch, mentions she has work, and heads out for class. He sighs about his own job, and she playfully calls him out for complaining, finding his human side amusing. She observes that he seems more motivated to help her than to work, a fact he can't deny as he praises her cooking. Stepping outside, he notes the weather has cleared, but his mind remains clouded with worry. On the crowded train to his classes, his thoughts drift back to her precarious situation. He grimly concludes that simply waiting won't fix her problems. In fact, it could make everything worse. His anxiety spikes as he considers how her ex's resentment might fester and escalate over time. He visualizes a terrifying future where her ex finds her, and the cycle of control becomes even more inescapable. The thought of going to the police brings a new fear, an officer questioning the delay in their report. He imagines being dismissed by the authorities, who would wonder why they waited so long to seek help. He resolves that reporting the situation immediately is still their best course of action. He realizes his hands are tied. He promised not to involve the police and knows she'll refuse if he suggests it now. Arriving at his university class, his eyes land on a group of students across the room. He focuses on one particular girl who seems cheerful and popular among her friends. A flashback reveals this girl is 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰, her old high school classmate and best friend. He considers asking 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 for help, believing she's better equipped to talk to her friend, but hesitates since they've never spoken. A new worry surfaces. He can't risk approaching her if she's still in contact with the ex-boyfriend. From his desk, he watches 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 contemplating how to navigate this delicate situation. He's torn between asking for help and the potential consequences, reflecting on how comfortable his new life has become. He recalls their high school days, remembering 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 as a popular girl from the top clique, while he was seen as a troublemaker. He recalls his high school reputation, where he was constantly called gross and made girls cry. He sighs, believing a guy with his past could never have a normal conversation with 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰. Convinced the idea is a dead end, he decides he needs a completely new plan. At lunchtime, he sits down in the busy cafeteria to eat the bento she prepared. He pauses, his chopsticks holding up a sausage carefully shaped like a little octopus. He pictures her in the kitchen, meticulously making the cute cuts in the sausage just for him. A small, genuine smile appears on his face as he appreciates her thoughtful gesture. Arriving home that night, he's still no closer to a solution but refuses to give up hope. She greets him at the door, ready to warm up dinner and welcome him back. As she suggests he bathe first, he spots his neatly folded clothes and clean bento box waiting for him. He soaks in the bath, a rare moment of peace in his chaotic new life. Emerging from his bath, he's greeted by a full dinner spread, feeling completely pampered. He feels the welcome is excessive for simply returning home, leaving her puzzled by his reaction. She explains this was her routine at her old place, but he bluntly asks her to stop, admitting he doesn't know how to respond. She admits she's the one who's surprised, revealing she had intended to clean up for him. She then remembers finding his apartment already clean to an almost obsessive degree. Her surprise at his domestic skills prompts him to question her reaction, which only confuses her more. She clarifies that his skills are simply unexpected, and as they watch TV, he feels a strange sense of gratitude. He insists she should be relaxing, but she fires back, questioning why he's lecturing her. She sighs, explaining that while she appreciates his help, he's overdoing it, and should at least act grateful. He wonders why she's glaring, and she bluntly asks him to do less around the house. She questions him, suggesting most people would just complain if a guest's chores weren't done perfectly. He counters that delegating tasks means accepting imperfection, then quickly reassures her that her cooking is great. She reveals her simple reason for waiting. Watching him eat makes her hungry all over again. She reluctantly admits she understands his logic, even if she doesn't fully agree with it. Still, she refuses to stop helping with chores, claiming she's simply too bored. He suggests watching TV, but she dismisses it as boring, and he suddenly remembers her phone is broken. A light bulb goes off as he gets up, finds an old tablet, and wipes it down. He presents the device to her, catching her completely off guard with his sudden gesture. He explains it's a spare he doesn't use anymore, offering it to her as a solution to her boredom. She finds it amusing that he's telling her to relax, a complete reversal of the usual dynamic. Ignoring her playful jab, he simply pushes the tablet into her hands. She accepts the device, a soft blush spreading across her face at his thoughtful gesture. Overcome with gratitude, she gives him a dazzling smile and a heartfelt thank you. He tries to act nonchalant, dismissing her thanks with a slight blush of his own. She eagerly volunteers to do the dishes first, but he insists she relax and even provides the charger. A while later, he calls out to her as she lies on her futon, engrossed in the tablet. She offers him the tablet back for just 10 minutes, leaving him puzzled by her strange offer. His confusion turns to shock as she abruptly hides her face in embarrassment. A glance at the tablet screen reveals a feed of suggestive photos, exposing the source of her sudden shame. He internally panics, realizing his old bookmarks are still saved on the device. He snatches the tablet and frantically deletes the history, apologizing for the oversight. She teases him with a sly look, playfully acknowledging his hidden interests. Flustered, he begs her to stop teasing him about the embarrassing discovery. She bursts into laughter, thoroughly amused by his mortified reaction. As the night deepens, their playful banter continues, bringing them a little closer. A moment of reflection reveals she still maintains a guarded and mysterious demeanor. On the fourth morning of living together, he starts his day by looking out the window. He discovers a filthy cleaning brush, his eyes lighting up with an obsessive urge to clean. Just as he's about to start scrubbing, he hears her waking up and freezes in panic. She sits up on her futon, sleepily greeting him good morning. Startled by his earlier shout, she asks what happened, forcing him to lie about his cleaning frenzy. He explains he got carried away by how satisfying it was to see the grime disappear so easily. She cheerfully agrees, relating his excitement over cleaning to the natural urge to shout. Her innocent comment about screaming when excited sends his mind straight into the gutter. Flustered by the unintended double meaning, he watches as she apologizes for oversleeping. She stretches while admitting she got completely engrossed in the tablet he lent her. Over breakfast, he expresses his gladness she found it entertaining and casually asks what she was watching. She gives a vague answer about watching videos, but he presses for more details. She eagerly offers to show him, completely forgetting her own rule about watching things while eating. She shows him a video about a couple being unfairly denied entry to an upscale restaurant. The story escalates when the couple vents at their usual diner, whose owner happens to be the fancy restaurant's former head chef. The video concludes with the rude employee getting fired, a moment of what she considers sweet, satisfying revenge. She stares at him with sparkling eyes, eagerly awaiting his verdict on the video. After asking if she liked it, he confesses that he's never been a fan of these kinds of revenge stories. He explains that he dislikes how the protagonists rely on someone else's power for their payback. He calls the storytelling lazy, pointing out the main characters take no responsibility for their own justice. Seeing her history is full of similar videos, she excitedly asks what part he enjoyed the most. He's utterly baffled by her question, asking her to clarify what she found entertaining about it. As she stares at him with dazzling expectation, he breaks into a nervous sweat, realizing she misunderstood his critique. She leans in, correctly guessing he didn't like the video and putting him on the spot. He quickly backpedals, claiming he was just annoyed at the waiter's cluelessness, not the story itself. To his immense relief, she completely falls for his lie and agrees with his assessment. As he heads out for the day, she mentions she has no work, and he reminds her to rest up. Walking alone, he theorizes her obsession with these videos stems from a desire for revenge against her ex. He resolves that her justice shouldn't be handed to her. She needs to be the one to take action herself. Arriving on campus, he worries that after 4 days, her ex must surely be searching for her. Deciding the situation needs a swift resolution, he concludes he must ask his friend Kasahara for help. Taking a deep breath, he steels his resolve, ready to finally confront the issue head-on. He scans the classroom for Kasahara, determined to talk to her today after failing to do so the day before. But his search ends in failure. Kasahara is nowhere to be found. Defeated, he walks home, realizing he can only catch her during their shared French class. Arriving at his apartment, he's greeted by darkness, and a new sense of dread creeps in. He recalls her mentioning she might go out, and a terrible thought strikes him. His mind races with the worst-case scenario, her ex spotting her and following her home. Fueled by sheer panic, he sprints up the stairs, desperately calling her name. He throws the door open, his heart pounding as he fears what he might find inside. His frantic eyes land on her, lying on the bed with the tablet still in her hands. A wave of relief washes over him as he realizes she's just peacefully sleeping. And on that quiet note of relief, the chapter comes to a close. His relief turns to mild annoyance as her only response to his frantic call is a soft snore. Deciding not to disturb her, he quietly moves to hang his laundry by the window. The noise startles her awake and she bolts upright, apologizing profusely for being asleep. In her haste, she loses her balance and stumbles forward right into his arms. He steadies her, chiding her for moving too fast, while she bashfully tells him to be quiet. She sits down, still apologizing, but he tries to calm her down, telling her it's no big deal. Her mood shifts to guilt as she realizes the chores were supposed to be her responsibility. She looks at him with intense self-reproach, admitting she failed to uphold her end of the bargain. He tries to brush it off, but she refuses his reassurance, consumed by her own sense of failure. When he asks why, she confesses she stayed up all night and ended up sleeping through the day. He bluntly tells her the solution is to stop staying up all night, leaving her momentarily stunned. He dismisses her self-blame, stating that problems should be fixed, not dwelled upon. Seeing her continued guilt, he decides to offer her a piece of serious advice. He looks her dead in the eye and tells her that messing up isn't a fatal mistake. To put things in perspective, he asks if her failure to do chores resulted in anyone's death. With the issue settled, she finally agrees to stop beating herself up and get more sleep. Visibly moved, she thanks him and compliments his surprising maturity. Her praise makes him uncomfortable, and he jokingly complains that her comment is almost creepy. She laughs it off and heads to the kitchen, privately thinking this must be what love feels like. He catches her quiet musing and asks what she said, but she quickly deflects, saying it was nothing. She smiles, confessing she regrets not talking to him more back in high school. He admits he feels the exact same way, revealing their mutual missed connection. His confession makes her blush, visibly moved by their shared sentiment. While eating, she wonders if their past could have been better, but he dismisses dwelling on regrets. He reassures her they can start over, then casually asks what she wants for tomorrow's meal. Her demeanor changes instantly as she scolds him for giving the universally dreaded whatever answer. She strictly forbids him from ever giving that answer to anyone else, leaving him slightly confused. He recalls his own mother giving him the same lecture as she happily continues eating. He silently clarifies that his answer was a genuine compliment because all her cooking is delicious. On the 5th day of hiding her, he stands in his classroom pondering how much she has changed. He believes she's finally in the right mindset to report her ex, which would bring them both peace of mind. His plan hits a snag as he scans the packed cafeteria, unable to find a single open seat. Annoyed that people are using chairs for their bags, he's about to give up when a hand suddenly grabs his arm. He turns to see his friend �㬂𝘂𝘓, who offers him a seat with a knowing smile. It's a stroke of luck. The very person he needed to find has just invited him to her table. She insists he join her, cheerfully stating that friends should help each other out. After some small talk about how long it's been, he finally sits down with her. 𝘂𝘂𝘓 immediately puts him on the spot, slyly asking if he's been avoiding her. He fumbles for an excuse, claiming he only talks to people when necessary, and she seems to understand his distant nature. A tense silence hangs in the air as his blunt explanation leaves them both with nothing more to say. She playfully accepts his logic, while he realizes he just made the conversation even more awkward. Her sincere offer to help only flusters him more, as he struggles with her easily misinterpreted kindness. Tired of the awkwardness, he directly asks what she wants, correctly guessing she has a specific topic in mind. She finally gets to the point, asking if he remembers Hayashi Megumi, the very person he needs to discuss. He confirms, dryly recalling how she and Hayashi were obnoxiously close and constantly arguing back in the day. She then asks the million-dollar question, has he seen Hayashi anywhere in Tokyo recently? Her direct question leaves him sweating and silent, trying to process this unexpected turn. He questions her motives, completely baffled as to why she would be searching for Hayashi. He connects the dots in the worst possible way, suspecting Hayashi's ex somehow roped 𝘂𝘂𝘓 into the search. The possibility that 𝘂𝘂𝘓 is connected to the ex freezes him, forcing him to be cautious as she tries to get his attention. His tense conversation is interrupted when another girl approaches, asking 𝘂𝘂𝘓 who he is. 𝘂𝘂𝘓 introduces him to her friend, 𝘰𝘰𝘬𝘰, who seems immediately intrigued. She then playfully introduces him as her boyfriend, a joke he quickly shuts down. 𝘰𝘰𝘬𝘰 recognizes him from their French lecture, noting his reputation for acing every quiz. Wasting no time, she gets close and asks him to tutor her, leaving him completely flustered. He internally freaks out, overwhelmed by her incredibly forward approach. 𝘂𝘂𝘓 expertly shuts her down, revealing she knows his class schedule, which baffles him. 𝘰𝘰𝘬𝘰 looks genuinely disappointed, but backs off from her aggressive request. Her attention then shifts to his lunch, surprised to learn that he can cook. 𝘂𝘂𝘓 remarks on his very homey bento as he quietly eats the meal Hayashi prepared for him. He internally fumes, unable to reveal who made his lunch and frustrated that his investigation hit a dead end. A sudden thought strikes him mid-bite, interrupting his meal with a new idea. He realizes the simplest solution is to just ask Hayashi directly about her ex and 𝘂𝘂𝘓's involvement. Arriving home, he's greeted by a smiling Hayashi, who warmly welcomes him back from the kitchen. But as he calls her name, her cheerful demeanor vanishes, replaced by a cold, intense stare. She immediately questions if he met another girl, making him wonder if he smells of perfume. His hesitation confirms her worst fears and her expression hardens with bitter certainty. He casually admits it, only for her to erupt, demanding to know why he'd meet another woman. Stunned by her possessiveness, he reminds her they aren't dating, which visibly wounds her. She withdraws completely, calling herself a stranger with no right to be jealous while spiraling into self-pity. Continuing her spiral, she questions the entire arrangement, wondering why she's even there. He realizes she's completely misinterpreted the situation, frustrated by her warped logic. As he reaches out to calm her down, she explodes with tearful rage, demanding he stay away. Without another word, she bolts out the door and down the stairs, leaving him stunned and calling her name. Now alone on the dark street, she walks aimlessly, overwhelmed by her own actions. Her face is a mask of exhaustion and regret as the weight of her outburst settles in. Staring at her feet, she's lost in self-reproach, questioning her impulsive decision to run. She recalls the moment she turned her back on him, her hand clenched in frustration. Overcome with anguish, she admits the citrus perfume sent her into a jealous rage she couldn't control. Memories of his kindness flood her mind, contrasting sharply with her recent outburst and his blunt rejection. Her face is a canvas of pure despair, tears welling up as she grapples with her actions. Lost on the street, she spirals, convinced he's either furious with her or relieved by her departure. The fear of him hating her is paralyzing, leaving her utterly clueless about what to do next. She collapses in defeat, silently pleading for the very person she just ran from to come and save her. Her despair is interrupted by the sudden arrival of a mysterious figure whose presence startles her. Looking up, she's frozen in terror as her ex-boyfriend, 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰, stands before her, calling her name. She can only whisper his name, confirming the man she's been hiding from has finally found her. He smiles with a chilling intensity, demanding to know where she's been all this time. Her mind flashes back to their first meeting at a college mixer, an event she only attended to make new friends. At the mixer, she was completely disengaged, brushing off the forced social interactions around her. The flashback reveals their first meeting, where he introduced himself with a disarming smile while she remained silent. Her first impression was that he was a calm, well-mannered, and completely harmless guy. Learning he was a banker, she felt he belonged to a world completely separate from her own. The story then cuts to her past, where she was constantly broke and juggling part-time jobs to survive in Tokyo. Her life back home was a constant battle against her strict, controlling father, making her desperate for freedom. Though she finally escaped his grip, her new freedom came with constant financial struggles. Dating 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 felt like a breath of fresh air, a complete departure from her difficult past. He took her on scenic drives, and for a while, their relationship seemed like a perfect escape. He eventually asked her to move in, a moment she now looks back on with regret, questioning her own motives. But soon, his charming facade cracked, replaced by constant criticism and condescending remarks about her lifestyle. The flashback reveals the horrifying truth of his abuse, showing her bruised and terrified face. He constantly belittled her, even insulting her cooking while pretending to compliment its improvement. Each day, he would leave for work, trapping her in an apartment that had become her own personal prison. Days and nights blurred together in the suffocating confines of their home. She reached her breaking point, paralyzed by the fear of him returning but knowing she couldn't stay. Mustering her courage, she finally made the decision to escape, seeking refuge at a nearby store. It was there she unexpectedly reunited with Yamamoto, a man who was the polar opposite of her tormentor. Back in the present, 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 reveals it's been 5 days since she fled, cornering her for an answer. His patience snaps, his face twisting with irritation as she flinches away in terror. He then shifts tactics, his expression softening into a chillingly gentle one, as he claims he was just worried. She forces out an apology, her body trembling with fear under his chillingly gentle facade. He cruelly points out her lack of options, telling her it's time to return home with him. His use of the word home conjures a terrifying image of her past suffering. She recoils at the thought of returning to the place that had become her prison. Her spirit breaks, convinced she's worthless and has no choice but to follow him back into the darkness. But a memory of Yamamoto's kindness surfaces, recalling how he gave her a purpose and a safe space. She remembers how he praised her efforts, giving her a sense of value she thought she'd lost forever. The memories of his kindness ignite a desperate resolve to escape and return to Yamamoto. Her hope falters as she convinces herself she pushed him away, imagining his disappointment if he saw her now. His voice echoes in her head, asking the simple, powerful question that cuts through her fear. Yamamoto's question sparks a revelation, and she realizes what she truly wants for herself. Her moment of clarity is met with 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰's condescending laugh, as if her feelings are a joke. He feigns concern, acting confused when she finally gathers the strength to confront him. With newfound defiance burning in her eyes, she declares that she is never going back with him. Her firm refusal catches him completely off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless. She demands he leave, referencing the pain he caused, but he plays innocent, claiming not to understand. His hollow apology for his occasional violence makes her snap, screaming that his abuse was a daily nightmare. 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 callously deflects, blaming his own cruelty on his irritation with her supposed disobedience. She desperately lists the sacrifices she made, but he cruelly shifts the blame, pointing out she never contributed financially. He launches into a final tirade, insulting her cooking and her character before smugly stating she has nowhere else to go. He delivers his final twisted argument, claiming he's the only person who could ever tolerate her. His words shatter her last illusion, making her question how she ever devoted herself to such a man. Without waiting for an answer, he grabs her wrist and begins to drag her away, treating her like an object. She fights back in terror, but his grip is like iron, refusing to let her go. Dragged away against her will, her thoughts scream for Yamamoto to rescue her from this nightmare. An unseen hand suddenly clamps down on his wrist, forcefully demanding he back off. Her rescuer is none other than Yamamoto, who now stands as a firm barrier between her and her tormentor. Yamamoto looks 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 dead in the eye, stating the obvious. She clearly has no intention of going with him. It's clear Yamamoto ran frantically to find her, arriving drenched in sweat to stand as her protector. Overwhelmed with emotion, she realizes he had been desperately searching for her all along. 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 quickly changes his tune, putting on a polite act and claiming it's just a couple's misunderstanding. He dismisses her terror as a hysterical episode, but Yamamoto points out she clearly wasn't happy to see him. Yamamoto remains unconvinced, stating that he overheard some very concerning things being said. When asked if it's a simple lover's quarrel, 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 eagerly agrees, while she quietly admits she couldn't take it anymore. Yamamoto calls his bluff, revealing he heard talk of physical violence and worse. 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰's polite facade shatters as he angrily tells Yamamoto to mind his own business. He tries to regain control by shouting that she's having an episode and that he still loves her. Her heart sinks, fearing Yamamoto will fall for 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰's manipulative lies and abandon her. Yamamoto appears to back down, agreeing that it's not his place to interfere, much to 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰's smug satisfaction. But then Yamamoto looks 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 dead in the eye and suggests they take this matter to the police, leaving him stunned. 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 panics at the mention of police, trying to argue against it while Yamamoto calmly insists it's the only fair solution. Yamamoto reminds him their public screaming match has already attracted a crowd and is grounds for a police call. He questions 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰's contradictory logic, pointing out his refusal to involve the authorities seems highly suspicious. Yamamoto stares him down, directly asking if he has something to hide that makes him fear the police. He then draws attention to the clear, undeniable bruises covering her arms, which 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 hastily dismisses. The growing crowd of onlookers begins to whisper, their suspicion and concern adding to her humiliation. As the crowd murmurs about calling the authorities, 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 desperately shouts that her injuries are just from a simple fall. Yamamoto calmly dismantles his lie, pointing out the various stages of bruising on her legs and questioning his lack of care. With his excuses crumbling, 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰's desperation turns to rage as he screams at Yamamoto. He desperately claims their relationship is built on love, a statement that makes her recoil in disbelief. Yamamoto's glare hardens, his patience completely worn thin by 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰's pathetic lies. He interrogates 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰, asking why he never filed a missing persons report if he was so worried. Yamamoto furiously refutes the excuse of being busy, accusing him of harassment instead of care. He declares 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰's behavior isn't love, but a childish power trip to feel superior. She is stunned into silence, realizing with awe that Yamamoto is truly angry on her behalf. As the onlookers watch, 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 stands defeated, the public humiliation finally breaking him. With his back turned, he offers a weak, shame-filled apology to the couple in the crowd. He bows deeply, trying to excuse his actions by claiming he sometimes just loses it. She watches his pathetic display, her expression cold and unmoved by his empty words. Knowing he will never change, she finally tells him that she is never coming back. He desperately pleads that he can't live without her, but she coldly dismisses his words as lies. With a pathetic expression, 𝘒𝘰𝘬𝘰 begs her one last time to come home with him. Her sharp gaze locks onto a suspicious mark near his collar, triggering a sudden realization. A flashback confirms his infidelity, and in the present, her expression hardens with the undeniable truth. She calmly exposes his lie, stating he never reported her missing because he'd already found a replacement. The final piece of the puzzle clicks into place, and she understands his concern was never real. In a final, desperate act, he reaches out, begging her not to go. She gives him her final, devastating answer, leaving him utterly defeated. The night after the confrontation, �㫂𝘬𝘰𝘬𝘰 reflects on the chaotic events that transpired. As he cleans his apartment, he can't help but notice how empty and spacious it feels. He recalls her presence in his home, realizing he now wonders when she'll return. Even at work, his thoughts drift back to her, unable to focus on his surroundings. Alone in the quiet apartment, he simply wishes for her to come back. Late that night, she finally returns, finding him still waiting up for her. He turns to greet her, a hint of relief in his voice as he notes her late arrival. Her somber expression immediately alerts him that something is wrong. She recounts the events of the previous night, explaining that the police eventually arrived on the scene. She reveals Seiji fled at the sound of sirens, and the police sent her home, leaving Yamamoto to invite her inside. Seeing how shaken she is, he gently suggests a shower might help her relax. She silently agrees with a nod, and he gives her some privacy to collect herself. Deciding not to pry, Yamamoto starts cooking a meal for her while she's in the shower. Just as he finishes plating the fried rice, he hears the bathroom door open and turns to greet her. She steps out wearing only a towel, her expression still heavy with the night's events. Yamamoto is caught completely off guard, blushing furiously as he realizes she forgot to bring clothes. When she lets the towel fall, he panics, shielding his eyes and desperately telling her to cover up. With tears streaming down her face, she expresses her immense gratitude, feeling indebted to him for saving her. She offers herself to him as payment, believing it's her obligation to follow his every command. She reveals her ex only valued her for her body, so she offers the one thing she thinks he would want. His embarrassment turns to righteous fury as he grabs her, asking if she wants him to become a controlling monster just like her ex. He vehemently refuses, declaring he would never stoop to Seiji's level, and firmly tells her to put on some clothes. She stares back, completely bewildered by his angry rejection of her desperate offer. His words finally break through her trauma, and she collapses into tears, questioning why he is so kind to her.